Hey, good morning, Trondhjem friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Patio Ponderings. This is episode number 35, and today my patio is on the playground at Trondhjem Church. It is a very breezy day, so we'll see how this goes today. So our story this past week in worship is the story of Jonah. And it really is one of my favorite stories, especially in the Old Testament. It is full of exaggeration, and if we were to read it in the original Hebrew, we would understand that it's full of metaphors and personifications and poetry and hyperbole and all those good big words. If we were to put it into kind of modern day terms as to what genre Jonah is, we would call it a dramedy, because it definitely has an edge of humor to it, even though it deals with some pretty serious stuff. So just a really quick refresher on the story of Jonah. Jonah is being called to the land of Nineveh by God. He has a very clear call to do this, and Jonah does not want to go. That is not in his plans. He takes the ship in the opposite direction to a place called Tarshish. Big storm hits the ship, and Jonah decides that's the perfect time to go down below and take a good, deep, long nap. But the other sailors don't let him be there for long, and they get him up, and they figure out that Jonah is at the center of this big storm that is threatening the ship and threatening their lives. And despite their best efforts to make it through the storm to get to shore, they realize that until Jonah is tossed overboard, that they're all at risk. And so Sunday we talked about what Jonah must have been feeling as he stood at the end of that ship about to go into the sea. I'm sure he was feeling a lot of fear, guilt, remorse, and regret. And regret is the theme this week. It is part of our discernment process as we think about our call, and it's one of the main themes of the Nourishing Vocation Project, which as usual I'll have more information about below the video. So when I think about regret, I think so many of my regrets have something to do with parenting, right? I mean, if we want to talk about parenting as a genre, I think dark comedy or dramedy pretty much covers it, right? And I think of the things I've said to my children, when I think of the things I did in parenting or didn't do, particularly in some instances the advocacy for my kids that I did not do or that I wish I would have done differently. I can think of so many regrets as a parent, right? We do the best we can, and in all the different challenges of life around raising kids and working and the busyness of it all, you know, we are deeply flawed, and the best of us as parents can make mistakes, and it has consequences for our kids. And there are definitely times which I wish I could have a do-over. And so I can relate to Jonah, as I'm sure you can. And in all areas of our lives, we have regrets, and the consequences of our actions have hurt other people and created storms in our lives and turmoil and brought us to places of fear. But if we remember the story of Jonah, when Jonah's hurled into the sea, to what would have been certain death for him, we get to ponder this verse. The Lord provided a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. So often we think of that fish as punishment or as divine arm twisting. Jonah, you are in this fish until you figure it out, until you get your act together. But did you notice that the fish was a provision from God? That fish certainly saved Jonah from drowning. The fish in this story is a symbol of God's grace, and rarely do we think of it that way. And it's really important to remember that in all of our regrets, in all of our guilt and remorse and the wishes for do-overs, that God gives us grace, that there's always a provision of a refuge. There's always a big fish there, that if we're willing to be swallowed up for a little bit, we can have some refuge and some space to reflect on our regrets, on our decisions, on our choices, to think about the consequences of those things. And we don't always get a do-over, but we always get a second chance in moving forward, right? And that's where I just love the Nourishing Vocation Project's language around regret, in that God provides us this space and this grace to turn hindsight into insight. So that just like Jonah decides to get his act together and get a new attitude and move forward on what he's called to do, we can do the same. And it doesn't mean that going forward is going to be easier or perfect or without struggle. I mean, Jonah, in the rest of the story of going to Nineveh, boy, he has a lot of struggle, and he still has some attitude issues. But Jonah remains in relationship with God, and that's what this is all about, is stepping back into relationship with God and thinking about that relationship and the support we have from God in moving forward and moving past regrets and the consequences of our actions. So how about you? You have any regrets? You have any things you wish you could have a do-over on? Are you hoping for a second chance in something? We all do. So I invite you then to think about and to ponder, how and where might God be providing you a refuge? How is God offering you a second chance and a way to turn your hindsight into insights for moving forward in a better way? As always, I would love to hear what you have to say. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you on Sunday. Bye.